Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
CannabisRadio.com presents The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hey, this is great, man.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokies and tokettes and non-token lovers of liberty. It is Wednesday, March 23rd, 2016, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us. In the middle of this week, we're still coming to you live from Scottsdale, Arizona, where it is once again blue skies, not a cloud in sight, temperatures in the upper 70s, maybe it's even up into the 80s right now. And Arizona is recovering from the presidential primaries that took place yesterday. There's been some concern about some shenanigans. Apparently, far too few polling places open up in the Latino areas and the more populated areas of Tucson and Phoenix. People standing in line for 5 hours or more in the hot Phoenix sun in order to cast their votes. Come on, America, let's get this thing together. It should be so easy to vote in this country. You know, people often bring up, well, nobody votes. We have such low turnout. Nobody votes. Well, yeah, who can take 5 hours off of their workday in the middle of the week to stand in line in a hot sun for a primary vote? You know, you get amazing results when you do something like voting on American Idol, let's say, because people can do it easily. They can do it electronically. They can do it from the comfort of their own home. You want to see voter participation rates go up, it's time to start adopting what the Pacific Northwest has done, Washington and Oregon, and I think there's a couple other states now that do this, where all of the voting is done by mail. It's such a wonderful thing, folks. I receive a booklet, a big, thick booklet with every candidate, with every initiative petition, with every bond vote listed out, the arguments for it, the arguments against it. This gets sent out to every registered voter by mail weeks before the election. Weeks. And you have time to study and figure out who's who and what's what. You can highlight it. You can write in it. You can keep your little voter guide. And then later you receive in the mail your ballot, the little bubble sheet that you fill in. You can go back to your guide. You can spend days filling it in if you want. You can talk to your family and friends as you fill out your ballot. You mail that in, and that's it. You're done. No standing in line, no waiting for polls, no making sure that you got a proper registration or not. This just seems to be such a no-brainer for America that we should go to complete vote by mail. It answers the problem of having a voter-verified paper trail. You'll have a voter's own ballot that they can take a picture of before they send it in. It makes so much sense that, yeah, it's really no surprise we haven't adopted it nationwide yet, huh? I bet if we had nationwide vote by mail, we would have such better turnout and we would get better chances on our voter initiatives because more of our people would be able to vote for them. Anyway, something to think about as we continue this election season, but let's talk about what's on the show today. Coming up on our show, we've got an edition of our Reformers Reader. We've got a new author joining us, Josh Haupt, and he is the author of a new book called 3 Alight, a revolutionary cannabis growing guide. So we'll talk to Joshua at 1:30 in our Reformers Reader segment. Coming up in the Radical Rant today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the insanity of prenatal drug testing, how we're throwing new mothers in jail because their infants turn out positive for drugs, usually marijuana. We've got to look at that study that's out, getting a lot of headlines today about how marijuana users do worse in midlife than non-users. I'll explain why. It's pretty obvious. And also, Harper's Magazine blows up the war on drugs and the racism behind it with a quote from former Nixon aide Ehrlichman, John Ehrlichman. We'll talk about that all coming up on The Russ Belville Show.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
Earn your PhD in THC monetization with CannabisRadio.com. Don't be late.
Are you playing an acoustic guitar but want to be louder without an amp? Try a resonator guitar. The fingerboard extension has National Resophonic and other resonators, square necks and round necks. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com. Go wild hog in the woods.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Cannabis Confidential with Dr. Dina. Candid.
I want to give you the inside story.
Captivating.
I want to introduce you to my kind and amazingly talented friends.
Compelling.
We get to meet some of the most amazing cannabis activists and warriors around.
Listen in as medical marijuana pioneer Dr. Dina shares never-before-heard stories, chats with cannabis insiders and celebrity friends, and provides invaluable perspective and insight into one of the fastest-growing industries in the world.
I want to share with you what was once confidential information. Let's expose the truth, discuss the issues, and learn the facts.
Cannabis Confidential, only on CannabisRadio.com.
It's time for the Cannabis Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Cannabis Radio News is now available exclusively at CannabisRadio.com. Now your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is Cannabis Radio News.
This is your Cannabis Radio News for Wednesday, March 23rd, 2016. Last week, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, released an updated set of guidelines for prescribing opioids to patients suffering from chronic pain. Buried inside the language of this attempt to put a leash on the prescription painkiller epidemic, the CDC urged doctors to modify their drug screening policies in an effort to prevent those testing positive for THC metabolites from being disqualified from treatment. Although the agency wrote that it still believes urine testing is necessary to discover any undisclosed use of illicit substances, it specifically states that this rule no longer applies to THC. Interestingly, the latest guidelines for prescribing painkillers come just a month after Senator Elizabeth Warren fired off a letter to CDC Director Tom Friedman urging his agency to research the effectiveness of medical marijuana as an alternative to opioids for pain treatment in states where it is legal. The letter also asked the CDC to study the impact of the legalization of medical and recreational marijuana on opioid overdose deaths. A new report says the production of illegal marijuana has dropped dramatically in recent years in Washington state. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration says the number of marijuana plants seized in Washington state in 2014 was 57,000, about 80% less than what was seized in 2010. Over that same period, the amount of processed marijuana seized dropped from 3,126 pounds of product to 635 pounds, less than a quarter of what agencies had found 5 years ago. The Yakima Herald-Republic says that Washington State Patrol attributes the drop to increased air reconnaissance and joint cooperation between state, local, and federal law enforcement. California consistently leads the nation in illegal marijuana production, with more than 2.6 million plants seized in 2014. Marijuana's black market and highway safety topped the agenda to open the first week of testimony in the Vermont House on legalization. The House Judiciary Committee took testimony Tuesday on S-241, a bill to allow the legal use, possession, cultivation, and distribution of marijuana in 2018, from officials representing state police, prosecutors, and sheriffs. Among the witnesses offering testimony was Major Glenn Hall, who oversees the Bureau of Criminal Investigation and the Drug Task Force for Vermont State Police. Hall began by questioning an assumption offered by pro-legalization advocates: legal sales will eliminate the black market. Dallas City Council voted not to try a 6-month pilot program in the city of Dallas that would have allowed people caught with a small amount of marijuana to avoid jail time instead being released with a citation and a summons to show up in court. The council voted 10-5 against the cite and release program, which was opposed by Dallas Police Chief David Brown. The program would have gone into effect in September and lasted through March, so the city could assess the results and see what impact it had. The cite and release program would not have changed the current penalties for marijuana possession. It would just allow police to issue a citation and a summons to appear in a Dallas courtroom, as opposed to immediately taking those possessing small amounts of the drug to jail. According to a Facebook post from council member Scott Griggs, 2% of Dallas Police Department arrests are for possession of small amounts of marijuana. He called it a, quote, substantial use of Dallas Police Department resources, end quote. An 80-year-old man who ran a sprawling marijuana dealing operation that covered several states, with records going back to 1992, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Marshall Dion pleaded guilty last year to drug and money laundering charges, and Tuesday's sentencing in Massachusetts was the latest chapter in a long, colorful history with law enforcement. When police in Junction City, Kansas stopped him for speeding in 2013, they found about $828,000 in cash in his pickup. A federal investigation led authorities to Massachusetts and Arizona, where they found about $15 million in cash, nearly 400 pounds of marijuana, and ledgers detailing drug deals going back to 1992. Earlier this month, U.S. District Judge Denise Casper rejected a plea agreement that called for a 5 to 7 year prison sentence for Dion. His lawyers then reached a new agreement with prosecutors that called for a sentence range of 5 to 10 years. Judge Denise Casper sentenced him to the maximum during a hearing in U.S. District Court. This has been your Cannabis Radio News for Wednesday, March 23rd, 2016. I'm Russ Belville.
Tommy Chong is ready to cut through the smoke and change the tone of Tilk Radio.
You know, during Dance with the Stars, I started feeling discomfort. Yeah. And not only that, I was doing these old man smells. And it was kind of embarrassing because, you know, all the Dancing with the Stars crew, cast and crew, you know, they were all young kids. Yeah. You know, and then all of a sudden, this old guy would come along and do one of those silent farts, you know, that you don't know you're doing it. Yeah. And all of a sudden you smell, and everybody go, what the hell smells? And, you know, and you knew it was me. And so I'd scurry off to the bathroom, you know. And that's when I knew that there was something wrong.
The Tommy Chong Podcast, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome to my world.
This is Dan Michaels from DanMichaelsAudio.com, and you're listening to Radical Russ on CannabisRadio.com.
It's time for cannabis facts about teen drug use from Robert Platshorn's TheSilverTour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A recent survey by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control indicates that in states that have legalized medical marijuana, the rate of marijuana consumption among high school students has not increased. In fact, in legal states like Colorado, teen use has actually decreased significantly. It's simply no longer a big deal for teenagers in legal states. This was Cannabis Facts from TheSilverTour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
Forwarding the cause of legalization and research of the growing cannabis industry, one podcast at a time. The Cannabis Radio Network.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
The world of cannabis is evolving at a frenetic pace. The Russ Belville Show gets behind the headlines to take a deeper look at breaking news in our Cannabis Focus.
Today in the Cannabis Focus, we take a look at the headline, Legalize It All, How to Win the War on Drugs. This is a front page article that is blowing people's minds. It's coming from Harper's Magazine, and it opens up with a quote that is no surprise, no shock to those of us that have been working in marijuana law reform, but has really opened the eyes of the mainstream this week. I'm seeing multiple reports about this particular article, in particular, the citation of the quote from John Ehrlichman. Now, it's important for us to understand that this quote is not new. This is not something that was just unearthed. It goes back to an interview from 1994. So this is something we've known about the war on drugs for about 22 years now. But he admitted in an interview in 1994, Ehrlichman died in 99, so 5 years before he died in 1994, he issued the following quote. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and the blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. End quote. So this is a clear admission by one of the aides of Richard Nixon that the whole meaning behind his 1971 war on drugs, declaring drugs public enemy number one, we really know now who he was declaring public enemy number one and two, the anti-war left and black people. It's clear that this war on drugs was generated as a method of stifling Nixon's political opponents. And lest we forget that it's not just Richard Nixon who was a major architect of this war on drugs and its racist effects. Keep in mind that every president since Richard Nixon has gone along with this war on drugs and could easily see that it was being perpetrated for racist purposes. We look forward to the era of Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, when they, abetted by Tip O'Neill and a democratically controlled Congress, along with Senator Joe Biden at the time, pushed for mandatory minimum sentencing and 3 strikes laws. We saw President Bill Clinton follow that era up with his infamous crime bill that even he now admits fueled the mass incarceration situation that we are dealing with today. We can see it in the prosecution of medical marijuana from the end of the Clinton administration through the George W. Bush administration and even the Barack Obama administration. Every one of them can see the reports that have come out from the ACLU and the Marijuana Arrest Research Project that have shown that the arrests, prosecutions, and incarceration for black people in the war on drugs are 2, 3, 4, sometimes 8 times as great for black people than white people. It's been so obvious to so many of us for so long, and not just since Ehrlichman and not just since Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon and John Ehrlichman were merely the sequel to the original racist drug war that started in the 1930s under Harry J. Anslinger, where the entire purpose of criminalizing marijuana was to go after the Mexicans and their loco weed. The entire purpose of the anti-opium laws was to go after the Chinese and their opium dens. And the entire purpose of the anti-cocaine laws were to go after the Negroes, as they called them back in the day, who might look at the white women or might think they're as good as a white man. The racism has been endemic in this war on drugs. It's been the entire purpose of this war on drugs. So I'm excited that now in 2016, Harper's Magazine is repurposing a 22-year-old quote about the war on drugs to get people to understand the racist nature of it. But it's just shocking and surprising to me that it's taken this long to get the mainstream to understand what this has always been about. Marijuana has been legal for older white people for quite a long time, in that you're unlikely to get caught. And even if you do, you're likely to get a slap on the wrist. It's time to end this racist war on drugs and begin healing these communities.
I know it seems like such a simple message, just say no, but it's an important one.
And there she is, Nancy Reagan, the recently passed First Lady, second wife of President Ronald Reagan, and one of the major implementers of this racist war on drugs. Happy 420 to the folks in the Mountain Time Zone who celebrate that daylight savings time thing. We'll catch up to you in an hour here in Arizona. Stay tuned.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
Next to THC and CBD, you can now add CBR to your cannabis vernacular. CBR as in cannabisradio.com.
Don't want to spend money on a night out, but don't know what to do other than watching TV or playing video games? Consider playing guitar, bass, banjo, or mandolin. The instrument will give you hours of entertainment with friends with minimal expense. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
The Russ Belville Show. We're as much like Cheech and Chong as ordinary Americans are like the Three Stooges. Hey, Mo!
Growing green to generate more green.
Hello to all you happy herbalizers, smiling trippy hippies, and everyone who believes in freedom and tolerance. This is The Grow Show, and I'm Kyle Cushman.
From food to fuel, from remedy to resource.
Welcome my guest, Ed Rosenthal, the guru of ganja. Let me ask you, right now I hear your lighter clicking. Are you smoking indoor or are you smoking sun-grown?
What am I smoking? I'm smoking concentrate.
Way to get out of the answer there. So you're truly like the king, right? You just clap your hands and somebody brings you a bowl and you're all set, right?
I wish that were the case.
The Grow Show with Kyle Cushman, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Today in the Data Mines, we experience that situation that happens so many times in the reporting of marijuana studies, and that is when a good study comes out about marijuana, you might get 2 or 3 hits in some obscure websites here and there. But when there's a story that portends some sort of harm from marijuana, it's all over the media. And that story today, I found it on Newsweek, I found it on USA Today, all sorts of outlets, is a new study that came out that says regular marijuana use is linked to problems in midlife. I'm reading this from the Oregonian's write-up of this. It says, a study that followed children from birth to midlife found that heavy marijuana users who smoked for years often fared worse as adults than their parents. Many ended up in jobs that paid less, required fewer skills, and were less prestigious. That wasn't so much the case for other people. This was published today in the Journal of Clinical Psychological Science and found that marijuana users who smoked at least 4 times a week experienced more financial difficulties, such as problems with debt and food insecurity, than their parents. Their lives were fraught with more social problems too. Now, they say that they tried to control for some variables. They say other studies have associated heavy and persistent marijuana use with problems in adulthood. but haven't always ruled out other factors. This research tried to do that by tracking and comparing variables such as intelligence, family structure, gender, ethnicity, parental substance abuse, criminal convictions, and antisocial behavior and depression in childhood. In accounting for so many variables, researchers made the study's conclusions stronger, they said, but acknowledged there may be unknown factors that they didn't track. Well, let me see if I can uncover a couple of these unknown factors they didn't track. First of all, when you tell me long-term cannabis smokers, people using 4 times a week or more, ended up in jobs that paid less, required fewer skills, and were less prestigious, I wonder if you're taking into account the fact that the jobs that pay more, require greater skills, and have more prestige are often jobs that drug test. A lot of the people who would be very skilled at those jobs but happen to be cannabis consumers don't bother even attempting to get those jobs because of the drug tests. So, yeah, there's a bit of a self-selection bias here. I can't tell you how many of the, well, I can tell you 13 of the 15 years that I worked in information technology, I worked as a contractor. So I made less money. I had a less prestigious position, and I required fewer skills for that job because contractors didn't have to take P-tests. So I'd end up doing software instruction, technical education, or desktop support when I actually have the skills for network analysis, security design, database programming, and so forth. But since those jobs required a P-test, I couldn't get them. So, of course, I ended up with less prestige, less financial support. They go on and they say these people have more problems with debt and food insecurity. Well, we understand the debt problem, right? Can't get the good job because of the P-test, or you lose a job and the security that comes with it, the retirement, the insurance, the health insurance, and so forth. You lose that job because of a P-test. Now you're underemployed or unemployed. Yeah, you're going to have more problems with debt. And as far as food insecurity, we've got so many of these places that are, so many of these states now that want to do drug testing for welfare, that want to try to find some way of keeping poor people from getting some sort of assistance, then yeah, it's really no shock that we're finding that the long-term cannabis consumers end up with a lesser lot in life. If they really want to do this study, they should try and find out what would happen to, let's say, coffee drinkers, people that drink coffee on a daily basis. If coffee were illegal, if they had to go to a criminal black market to try to access their coffee, if they ever got caught with coffee, they could lose their job, lose their scholarships, lose their financial aid. And any place you want to go to work, there's a test to determine whether or not you've ever used caffeine in the past week, and random tests from time to time to detect whether or not you've used caffeine. Do you think we would probably have fewer caffeine drinkers, fewer coffee drinkers, doing as well as their parents did? Do you think maybe they'd have more social problems, more debt, more food insecurity? Now, they want to try to paint this as some problem with cannabis users, but like I have said so many times, so long as cannabis is illegal, so long as it's socially disapproved of, so long as there is a stigma and a criminality surrounding it, you cannot tease out any accurate data about the drug effects from the prohibition effects. Now, the author of this says they have more antisocial behavior at work, lying to get a job, stealing money, more relationship problems, intimate partner violence, and so forth. But again, if you're in a situation where you are deemed to be a criminal, then that mindset starts to take effect on you. And the situations you end up in life with less money, less security, lead to more stress, lead to more interpersonal problems, and can lead to more antisocial behavior just to try to get ahead. Lying to get a job? Yeah, that could be lying about whether or not you used cannabis so that you can try to get the damn job. So don't accept what you're hearing from the mainstream media about this. It's impossible to determine what regular cannabis use actually does to someone when the prohibition causes far more problems than the drug itself. All right, when we come back, we'll have author Joshua Haupt on the line. We're going to talk about his new book, 3 a Light. Stay tuned.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Ignite the conversation on some trending topics along the Cannabis Radio social media network. Join our crew of thousands on our Cannabis Radio page on Facebook or at Canna Radio, CANNA Radio on Twitter. Plus, look for our Facebook and Google Plus pages for all of our original programs and connect with Dr. Dina, Kyle Cushman, Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Nurse Heather, Doc Rob, the hosts of Ganjapreneur, and more. Connect with the growing Cannabis Radio social crusade at Canna Radio on Twitter or search for Cannabis Radio on Facebook, Google Plus, and Instagram and grow with us.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Keep your cannabis cravings under control. Feed your mind with CannabisRadio.com.
When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
The best weapon you can have in the prohibition war is your mind. Fill your head with the knowledge you need by checking out this latest entry in the Russ Belville Show's Reformer's Reader.
Welcome back, everybody. In the Reformer's Reader today, we're joined by author Joshua Haupt. Joshua, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of your show. I appreciate you guys inviting me on. Very honored.
Very, very happy to have you here. And where are you calling us from today?
Calling you from Denver, Colorado.
Oh, lucky you in Denver. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your book. It's called 3 a Light, and it's not just a cannabis grow book, but also kind of your story. So let's give people a little forward to the book, so to speak. Tell people about your background and what brought you to writing this book, 3 a Light.
What the Reader's Digest version of the background would be, obviously, I was diagnosed with epilepsy around 14, and I definitely struggled with a slew of medications like anybody else that has epilepsy. Was able to gain access to medical cannabis when I was about 18, and we quickly wanted to begin growing it ourselves. Of course, I was like any other user gardener at the gate, that I was just trying to learn as much as I could from bits and pieces here through a High Times magazine article or a piece of, Jorge or Cervantes or Ed Rosenthal's information. Those are great go-to sources as well. And the weeds began growing. A few years into it, I met someone who was growing with techniques that were very unique and pulled yields that were far and above ours, as well as the flower quality was far and above anything I'd ever seen before. And so we started growing that way. With these yields, we went from a pound of light to 3 pounds of light, and the flower itself is it comes through in the same way. It has to reach essentially the healthiest point of its life to be able to achieve that number anyways. So with that, I started teaching my friends how to do it, so that way they could be better for themselves, have easier access to more medicine, and most importantly, a higher quality level of medicine. And over the years of teaching others, it kind of just hit me on the head after I set up my probably 15th friend of, hey, you ought to write a book on this, because there's really nothing out there that, that runs it from, hey, here's what you do all the way from seed to finished flower. And this is how you achieve, this level of organization in your garden when it comes to kind of more of a structured approach to the garden, if you will. And so the book itself lays out A to Z on, how to have a very healthy garden. But we also make it's not literature overwhelming read. It's very photo friendly. We try and keep it as simple as possible. It's almost as if Apple or, a very user friendly company designed a how-to.
Yeah, looking at the book itself, big, full bleed pictures, high-res color photography, and you've got a system of kind of icons going along with it, so everybody knows exactly where you're at, what you're talking about, what stage of the process you're in. And the title of the book, again, is 3alight. You can find out more at the website, 3alight.com, and that's the words, THREE, light.com. And that refers to the 3 pounds per light. Is that what you're saying? Or is it 3 plants per light?
It's 3 pounds per light. Most gardens, as you know, if they have 20 lights in there or even 4 lights, you probably pull about 1 pound to 1.5 pounds a light. That's going to be your average, if you will. We are going to teach you how to pull 3 pounds of light.
Wow. And this
in
is
your garden. And
this is
we're
revolutionary
north of 4
because
now.
we see
Thank
that,
you.
like you say, 1 pound, 1.5 pounds per light for most of the people. And now you're saying, doubling or tripling that yield. How did you manage to figure out these techniques that we haven't heard yet from Ed Rosenthal or Jorge Cervantes? And how'd you come to this revolution?
I can only take a certain degree of credit with this. This was taught to me from a mentor, like I said, probably 8 years ago. He showed me the way on how he has done it and how his mentor taught him. So there's over 30 years of growing experience into this method. We've been tweaking it over the years that I've been doing it. And, I've just been blessed. It's all about, your net worth in this world is your network. And I happened to meet the right person that showed me how to, do things on a different level and really open my eyes in the garden for what's possible.
Yeah.
And now we're north of, 4alight with most of our strains. So it's very easy for me to stand behind the 3alight number when it comes to teaching individuals how to be, a top shelf gardener for themselves and also keeping it simple. I feel like a lot of people, and, a lot of people have the tendency to overcomplicate this. And there's a way to keep it simple. And that's what we strive for.
Yeah. So. And especially, when we're dealing with medical marijuana states that either have some sort of canopy limit or some sort of plant count limit, being able to maximize what you're getting out of those lights is crucial.
Absolutely.
Now, let's talk a little bit about
coming from that's what the situation is that developed the book, because we were all medical users that had limited plant counts. And so if you wanted to do well for yourself with limited plant count and have a decent amount of medicine between harvests, you quickly wanted to learn the most efficient way to grow.
Sure. Now, as you've been talking about this, you mentioned how you've got some strains now that are approaching 4 a light, 4 pounds per light.
Yes,
is this technique strain dependent? Do some strains do better under this technique than others?
Of course, you're going to have all strains, especially with how far we are away from a true indica or a true sativa.
Sure.
Every strain seems to be a hybrid of another now. The closer you are to the genetic makeup, i.e. the closer true OG you have, a true Kush, it's always going to perform stronger and do better. But we had been able to achieve, we've tested this theory over hundreds of strains. We achieved 3+ a light with all of our strains. The only one I ever got stuck at was Purple Rec. I got stuck with Purple Rec at about 2.5 pounds a light. But other than that, it's not strain specific. You can definitely apply these. It's a one-size fits most for not only the methods that we apply it with, but also the feed regimen that we follow it with. How we do it. And if you don't have a copy yet, I definitely want to get you a copy.
Yes.
And you can take the Pepsi challenge for yourself. I'd love to,
I would love to take
show
advantage of this for my new right in the state of Oregon to grow my 4 plants at home. That definitely sounds like something
Wonderful.
we could use. Check it out, folks. It's 3alight is the book. It's at 3alight.com. We're speaking with Joshua Haupt. He's the author and a medical marijuana patient who's been dealing with epilepsy since teenage. And, Joshua, we see a lot of these stories out about these kids, these little kids that are using these CBD oils to get past their epilepsy. You're a bit older than that. Give folks a little idea about what you had to go through before you managed to get to cannabis. What sort of terrible drugs you had to be put on?
Yeah, I mean, to give you we can just speak about the results. I started having seizures at 14. I was bald by 19, overweight, you name it. I dealt with it all. And all I wanted to do was put you on this medication, put you on that medication, and really just give you a bunch of medication that, quite frankly, a developing liver can't handle. And the craziest thing is, the moment I tried CBDs was the only moment, and this wasn't even that long ago, it was the only moment that I immediately felt as if I didn't have epilepsy anymore.
Wow.
It's crazy. When you have epilepsy, and epileptics can relate to this, you almost feel like your brain has the speed wobbles. Like you're on a skateboard, you're going too fast, and you start to wobble, but you can't bail because you're going to have to outrun it. So you kind of feel like if you have epilepsy, your brain has speed wobble. Huh. And when you take a CBD oil, oh my goodness, it almost like buckles it in. You're like, oh, all right, okay, I'm good. I can go through my day now. And I'm such an advocate for it only because I'm first and foremost. And then you hear about, my AC guy. He moved out here with his daughter from the East Coast because his daughter's 6 years old, keeps having seizures. She was having over 200 seizures a month. Oh. Okay? It's just terrible, to go through that. She's only had, I think, a handful of seizures in the last year.
Yeah.
From this.
Yeah.
It's just, I get very passionate about it just because it's one of those things that, and then obviously something just happened today on the FDA not approving cannabinoids, and it just, for CBDs, and it just, it hurts my heart because there's a lot of kids out there that got to go through the same gamut that I went through with their parents getting all hurt, and everybody's got to watch them have seizures, when all you got to do is allow interstate trafficking of something that is proven to help these kids.
Yeah.
And there's no THC in there, so it's not getting them messed up. It's just helping their brain work.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Give them another spoke on the wheel that they were missing because they were born that way, and it's not their fault.
Right. And Joshua, as a teenager, you get access to cannabis and you start to find some success with it. But it sounds to me like you were the victim of a lot of us, that a lot of us are, of prohibition, how it bred CBD out of plants. So those first few plants and strains that you got a hold of, were they good but not great?
Exactly. And, and over the years now we have an agriculture chemist on the team where we're pushing hard for CBDs. Those are the biggest things that we are concerned about. CBDs are going to be huge, and it allows us to, like I said, give back. And I don't know any other story that, gets closer to your heart than hearing about a kid that's struggling with seizures, and you are able to relieve that on a level that doesn't cause them to lose their hair at 19, them to deal with weight issues earlier in life than they should. I work hard. Now I'm all about a sharp mind, so I'm in the gym every day. That's a huge part of my epilepsy battle. I haven't taken any medication for the last 5 years. It's been great. I've been doing very well, other than my CBDs, of course, as well as a healthy, fit, active lifestyle. Try to keep the stress low. I have the daily joint, of course, that helps me with that, and then some good rest, and that's my medication against epilepsy. Because
have you been using the 3-Alite techniques on any CBD dominant strains and gotten results from those?
Absolutely. Oh yes, absolutely. Yes, we're definitely working. A lot of people think that it's just Charlotte's Web that comes through, and we're doing a lot of internal research on our end, trying to even push harder for new ones. We have quite a few plans in the work to even further that road.
That's awesome. The book is called 3-Alite. It's the story of Joshua Haupt, who's overcome epilepsy and come up with a revolutionary new growing technique that could double or triple your yield of medical cannabis. So check this out at 3alite.com. And Joshua, you got any events that you're going to be at, or any contact information you'd like to tell our listeners about?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions about the book, always reach out to info@3alite. We've sold now a few hundred books. And it seems like every one out of every 60 books I sell, there's always someone that comes at me and tells me I made my book too simple, and they know more than me, and I'm the idiot. And it's always kind of funny and interesting. But we encourage them to reach out to us. Out of all the books we sold, I've had 3 people that have done this, and now these 3 individuals are close friends of mine, and I've spoke with them personally. So it's one of those things where we kind of take you on as a partner, and we want to help you do well. If you want to spend the $500 on the book, because it's not cheap, we all know that. And when we're giving away some intellectual property here that allows you to as you can see, your return on investment comes very quickly.
Yes.
Even with one light on one harvest, let alone multiple lights with multiple harvests.
Well, thank you, Joshua, for your input on this. We appreciate it. We encourage everyone to check out 3alight.com.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
The next generation of vaporizers has arrived. Vuber vaporizers are blazing the way with unparalleled technology for oil, concentrate, or dry flower pens. Providing unsurpassed customer service and expert craftsmanship, Vuber vaporizers use cutting-edge technology, providing a power-packed, smoother vapor with a lifetime guarantee. Experience vaporizing the way it was meant to be. The Vuber way.
From dabs to chivas, sativas to indicas, we roll out a whole concentrate of fresh new content every week. It's like going from the greenhouse to the dispensary. CannabisRadio.com.
Hey everybody, it's Radical Russ here from 420 Radio, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
Get the latest updates on the Russ Belville Show by following Radical Russ on Twitter and liking the Russ Belville Show on Facebook.
The smoke is rising, and the next crop of podcasts devoted to cannabis providers and enthusiasts are ready to be harvested. Welcome to the Cannabis Radio Network, founded by respected rainmakers who have been producing award-winning podcasts for over a decade. Industry headlines, business updates, medical reports, marketing, and e-commerce education rolled up perfectly for your consumption. Let's grow together. The Cannabis Radio Network. CannabisRadio.com.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
And one major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
Today for the rant, I am going to lavish some praise on one of the I states and drugs. You know the I states, right? Illinois, Iowa, Idaho, and Indiana. And usually when I tell a story about one of the I states and a law they've passed regarding drugs, it's not good news. But today, in one of those rare moments, I actually get to praise the state of Indiana. I know, hold on to your hats, folks. We are going to praise the state of Indiana, and not just the state, but their Republican governor, Mike Pence. You'd have to search far and wide for me to say something good about this guy, but today is the day. So mark it on your calendars, folks. I have something good to say about Indiana. On March 21st, the governor of Indiana, Mike Pence, signed Senate Bill 186 into law. This bill prohibits doctors and other individuals involved in prenatal care from informing the cops of the results of a drug screening program done on a pregnant woman. I don't know if you know a whole lot about this epidemic out there, but throughout the United States, we have a situation where pregnant women will come in for prenatal care and get their ultrasounds and the other tests and the vitamins and all the things they need. And they'll also be given a drug screening, a urine test usually. And if that urine test comes up positive for illicit drugs, in many cases, these women are then reported to law enforcement under the guise of protecting the children from child endangerment, danger to the fetus from the woman using an illicit substance. Indiana's new law has changed that, has made it so that these doctors and nurses and other health professionals are not what we call mandatory reporters. Under Indiana law, a doctor or caregiver involved in prenatal care is a mandatory reporter and must contact authorities if he or she believes a child is being abused. Now, Indiana law doesn't specifically say that smoking pot while you're pregnant is child abuse, but some states have gone beyond that and said that yes, it is. In Tennessee, for example, they require a drug screening of a pregnant mother, and prosecutors can charge the mother with aggravated assault, not just child endangerment, aggravated assault with a penalty of up to 15 years in prison if she's caught using illegal drugs during pregnancy. Congratulations, ma'am. You just delivered a healthy baby boy. But since you're a pot smoker, you won't get to see him until he's 15. So Indiana has now passed this law to remove that requirement. And the reason why had nothing to do with marijuana. It was drafted in response to the epidemic in heroin and painkiller abuse in Indiana. This rise in drug abuse, actual drug abuse, opioids, toxic and addictive drugs, has led to complications at birth because of the drug use. And when women are using these hard drugs during pregnancy, there's heightened risks of premature birth, low birth weight, and natal death. So the babies can also be born with addictions themselves and have to spend a lot of time in the neonatal intensive care unit. But again, we're talking heroin, oxycodone, fentanyl, heavy-duty toxic addictive drugs. And the reason why this law got passed with respect to heroin and these opioid painkillers is that a lot of the professionals in healthcare believe, rightly so, that this punitive approach to drug use by pregnant women only has the effect of incentivizing pregnant women from staying away from any sort of neonatal care. If you've got a woman who's abusing oxycodone while she's pregnant, and you threaten her by taking her kids away and throwing her in prison, she's a whole lot less likely to go to see the doctor, and nobody will know that she's using oxycodone while she's pregnant. So the new Indiana law has a shield, kind of a limited shield for these pregnant women, applying to verbal screenings or questioning about drug or alcohol use. It applies to urine tests. It applies to blood tests. So if the woman just mentions that she's using drugs, if a pee test turns up positive for metabolites or a blood test turns up for active metabolites, that information cannot be given to law enforcement agencies without the patient's consent or a court order. Imagine that. Indiana has actually made the medical decisions between a doctor and a patient, the medical consultations between a doctor and a patient, solely the business of the doctor and the patient. What do you know? We're getting cops out of the healthcare field. This is something that needs to be taken up by every state in the nation, and kudos to Indiana for pioneering this in the Rust Belt. The more we continue to punish pregnant women who use illicit substances, the worse outcomes we will have for the children, as those women are incentivized to keep quiet about their use. We've seen this in the prenatal drug testing. We've also seen it in postnatal drug testing. There's a procedure that'll be done with newborn infants, which is where they'll test the meconium of the infant, which is a fancy term for first baby poop, right? The fetus builds up poop while it's in the womb, right? Once the baby's born, that first poop is from while it was in the womb, all the nutrients and such it was receiving from the mother. And they'll test, I know, you're shaking your head. What? They test baby poop? Yes. Yes, they'll test baby poop to see if there's THC metabolites in it. And then they'll punish the mother. They'll take the kid away. They'll put the kid in child protective services. They'll put him in the foster care system, which statistics show is far worse for the kid than any outcome that could come from a mother using pot. And this is a very difficult section of our issue that we have to contend with. People who might not really care if someone smokes pot on their own could have a completely different outlook on a pregnant mother smoking pot that might affect the newborn. And the studies that we've gotten so far, the science we've gotten so far on pot use during pregnancy is often conflicting and incomplete. Back in the 70s, we had, sorry, reading my chat room there. But back in the 70s, there was Dr. Melanie Dreyer did an extensive study on mothers in Jamaica. And here's a place where we're talking about moms that are using ganja on a regular basis. And Dreyer's work found that there was really no significant differences between the children of moms that used pot versus moms that didn't. Subsequently, we've seen other studies that have come out that say they will be lower birth weight babies, or they'll have more trouble adjusting in one area or another. And folks, I'm of two minds on this. On the one hand, I think that the developing fetus is highly sensitive to many factors, and that pregnant women should probably not even drink coffee. Caffeine might be bad for the baby, right? So I understand the need for caution and the want to make sure that pregnant women are as healthy as they possibly can be. But I also think we do need to do a little bit of cost-benefit analysis in this to understand that, yes, there might be an increased risk at some level for a pregnant woman using marijuana, but is her marijuana use helping medicinally in such a way that it actually improves the prospect of a healthy pregnancy? For example, if we've got a woman who's suffering from hyperemesis, she's got terrible, terrible morning sickness, she's puking day and night from her pregnancy, how much nutrient deficiency will that baby suffer from that mom constantly being nauseous? How much stress in the womb does the baby suffer from the mom constantly being sick? Then if we give that mom some cannabis and it alleviates her nausea to the point where she can keep food down and nourish that baby, isn't that worth it? Is there really so much of a terrible risk to the fetus and the newborn that outweighs protecting the health of the mother so she can continue with a healthy pregnancy? And especially considering the drugs that they will prescribe to pregnant moms and the side effects and the toxicity we know about those drugs in comparison to cannabis, it seems to me like we should be defaulting to the herb. It seems to me that cannabis should be the medicine of first resort when we're talking about these moms that are having all these terrible issues. These are some considerations that we definitely need to take a look at, and more science needs to be applied to this issue of pregnant women and their developing fetus. Kudos to the state of Indiana and Governor Mike Pence for having some compassion and trying to keep women involved in prenatal care. That's all the time we got for today, but before we go, some big news just broke. iHeartRadio has just accepted the Russ Belville Show and will be adding it to their index. Over the next 48 hours, I should be in the iHeartRadio app. Thank you to all the engineers at CannabisRadio.com who helped make that possible. Great to be on iHeartRadio. For everyone here at Cannabis Radio headquarters in Scottsdale, Arizona, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned. Hour 2 is next. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.